So far in the course, we have learnt about wines that are mainly dry, wines with 10 grams or less residual sugar. This is because these are the wines you're going to see and serve the most. But the grape is a wonderful fruit and can also create wines with a rich and delicious honeyed sweetness, wines that are normally served at the end of a meal with dessert, or can even be a dessert on their own. In this lesson, we are going to learn about 4 of the main ways some of these dessert wines are made. The characteristic that all these wines have in common is a high level of residual sugar. Because we know that acidity and sugar balance each other out, another characteristic of great dessert wines is that they have high levels of acidity. Without this acidity, the wines would taste cloying and syrupy and would not be a pleasure to drink. There are 2 main ways to create dessert wines. You either have grapes with very high levels of sugar that even after fermentation have a lot of sugar left in the wine, or fermentation is stopped so there is a high amount of unfermented sugar in the wine. In this lesson, we are going to learn about wines that use very sweet grapes. In the next lesson, we are going to learn about the second method, known as fortification. The biggest difference between the styles of dessert wines in this lesson is how the grapes are handled in the vineyard to make sure that they are very, very sweet. We are going to find out about late harvest wines, noble rot wines, straw mat wines, and ice wines. Let's start with late harvest wines. Late harvest wines are exactly what they sound like. Grapes are left on the vine far longer than those being used for dry wines. As they ripen on the vine, the sugar levels increase dramatically, and the grapes are picked when they are almost raisins. What is important for late harvest wines is that the variety is still able to retain enough acidity to balance the final wine. The grapes are then pressed and fermented until the alcohol level is too high for the yeast to survive. Some of these wines are then aged in oak barrels to add complexity. Next, let's understand noble rot wines. Noble rot wines are some of the most famous and celebrated of all dessert wines. They are made from grapes that have been infected with a type of spore known as Botrytis cinerea that rots fruit and vegetables. White wine grapes are used and need a temperate climate with humid mornings and warm, dry afternoons for the fungus to grow on the grapes. When grapes are infected with Botrytis cinerea, they are covered with a grey rot and look disgusting. But inside the grapes, something magical is happening. As the fungus rots the grapes, it transforms the flavor chemicals inside and reduces the water in the grape by 1/3, leaving behind shriveled, super sweet grapes with incredible flavors of honey, ginger, and apricots. These grapes are picked very carefully, so only the infected grapes make it to the winery. These are pressed, and the tiny bit of super sweet juice is squeezed out. Once the juice starts fermenting, it is transferred to oak barrels, where the high sugar levels can prolong the fermentation for up to a year. Once the alcohol level rises to a level that kills the remaining yeast, you are left with a rich, tasty, and complex sweet wine. This is transferred to other barrels for further aging. These wines are made from all sorts of white grape varieties. The most famous are those from Sauternes in France, where Semillon and Sauvignon Blanc are the major varieties. These sweet and complex wines are able to age for 30 to 40 years, gaining more and more nutty complexity. And all because of a disgusting-looking fungus. Amazing. Next, let's understand straw mat wines. Straw mat wines gain their sweetness by harvesting grapes and letting them dry on straw mats in the sun. As they dry, water evaporates, the grapes shrivel, and you are left with super sweet grapes ready to be made into rich dessert wines. Finally, let's understand ice wines. Ice wines are extremely rare and very expensive, as they can only be made when vineyards freeze with grapes on the vine. Riesling is most often used. mainly in Germany and Canada, where the climate allows for grapes to freeze on the vine. These frozen grapes are then taken to the winery and pressed. Because most of the water in the grapes have frozen, only the super sugary juice is left. Only tiny amounts of ice wine are made, and they can be incredibly expensive. The best time to serve any of these wines is at the end of the meal. Some people may enjoy having a sweet wine with their dessert, but this often ends up being too sweet. A classic match for rich, sweet wines, especially noble rot wines, is a strong blue cheese. The tart cheese and the rich honeyed wine is one of the classic pairings. We will learn more about serving dessert wines in the next level.